February the 12th, 2003, and this is the beginning of an interview with Larry Baxter. He lives in Onega, Kansas, and he is how old?
56.
56, and when were you born, sir?
1946.
1946. We're meeting with history students at the High School of Onega in the classroom of their teacher, Mr. Behrens. My name is Dean Schoengert, and I'll be the interviewer. I am the coordinator of in our county for the Veteran Oral History Project, which is what we're doing today. And what war did you serve, Mr. Baxter?
Vietnam.
In Vietnam. What was the year span of Vietnam War?
Well, it started back in the early '58, and it went to like '76 before it was over with.
Mm-hmm. And how did you get in the war? What were you doing before?
I was in school and got out of high school, and I was drafted. They had the draft then, and I got drafted in 1964. Took boot camp at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. Took my advanced infantry training at Fort Leonard Wood. From there, I was stationed in Germany and come down on orders to go to Vietnam in December of 1964.
So when you went in, you originally went to Germany.
That's correct.
And then you were assigned later to Vietnam.
6 months later.
6 months later. We got a map up here. Can you show us where Vietnam is? Get ready for that sometime.
Well, I was all over. I was down here in the Mekong Delta, which is in the lower China here. I was trying to see there. I was in the Mekong Delta. Saigon was north. We were all over. I was over there for 3 years. The first year I was in infantry. I was stationed north of Saigon in an infantry outfit, and then after I'd served my year in Vietnam, I come back to the States, was discharged. I was drafted for 2 years. Went to work for Boeing Airline in Wichita. And I was looking at the re-enlistment bonus, which I thought was pretty good money. I was kind of wanting a new car, and I thought, well, I can't afford that working here, but that bonus would let me buy a new one. So I re-enlisted into the service, and that's when I become an RA, which is regular Army instead of a draftee. Back in the service, come down on orders, went straight back to Vietnam, so there went the new car. And the second time I was over there was in '66 and '67, '68 and '69. I served 2 more years after I served my initial first year, and I was a door gunner on a chopper down the Mekong Delta, which is in South Vietnam. Flew on choppers as a door gunner.
Door gunner, what's that mean?
Door gunner, we had M60 machine guns mounted on helicopters, which was the old Charlie and Delta models. There's the pilot, crew chief, assistant pilot, co-pilot, which we called, and then the door gunner himself. Crew chief and door gunners had M60 mounted on the choppers. What we called were the slicks. That's what I started out on, was just the M60 mounts, where we took troops into an LZ, which is a landing zone where we drop off infantry. They'd go through the rice paddies, try to find tunnels, VC that was hidden in these tunnels where they had hospitals, and we would try to...
VC is
the Viet Cong, which I guess I'm thinking my kids, you know, they kind of understand this because they've been through, so, you know, for me, I use the military terms, some of them I will not use here.
That's fine.
And then I learned to fly with the pilots in case something would happen to them. They wanted us to be sure we could get a crippled ship back, which was a chopper, you know, something if one of them would get shot, because in the front they're all open chin bubbles. I flew approximately 3 months on the slicks, and then I went to gunships. And what gunships consist of, it's the same thing. The only thing is we had pods mounted on the side which shot Willie Peters, which is like a rocket that would come out. We would go in and support the ground troops by shooting the Willie Peters into the rice paddies or wherever we may be, into the villages. During the Tet Offensive '68, which was probably the worst time I had over there, I remember distinctly we got overran on the compound. VC was putting hand grenades in our choppers, dropping them down in the fuel tanks. They overran our compound. And what they did, they put tape around their hand grenades, drop them in there. Well, that JP4 fuel would eat that tape and explode the helicopters. We was very fortunate we never lost one chopper. We had good maintenance people that dropped them fuel tanks, got them out of there, and we were back in the air. But right next to our compound, we had an orphanage building which we supported, and it was probably as big as our First National Bank, where we had homeless kids there and they had nuns there, and we had to get them kids out of there. And it was kind of a sad situation. We didn't get them all out, but we had no choice but to go in and level the building, because DC had took that over and they were doing quite a bit of damage to our host there. So it's just the price that you pay. And then I come back and was married and had Sheila, which I think most of you know. She's a nurse in Topeka, and I was still in the service, and I was serving in Texas. And when she was, we had her starting our second year of marriage. We'd been married about 11, 12 months, and then we had Sheila, and she was 6 months old when I come down on orders. I was a staff sergeant and got sent back to Vietnam, which was probably the hardest time leaving a family.
Now, just 2 tours in Vietnam, or?
This is my third one coming up.
That's what I thought,
And,
third one.
So then I was stationed clear up north of Southeast Asia. I was up around Cambodia, and I was with the combat engineer outfit, which we served as an infantry. We was making runways and trying to build roads, and we had what we called the French fort, which was outside of Khartoum, and we had a mountain there. To this day, I'm not sure, except what we've been taught and learned as far as being in the military. We had American advisors on top of the mountain, and they claimed that there was a VC hospital inside of this mountain where they were tunneled in. And then we had Americans on the bottom, and every night we had firepower going into that mountain. I just can't imagine how much lead was shot into the mountain there trying to dispose of it. But this went on for years after I left too. But I'd lost a lot of people and close friends up there around Khartoum and French Fort, because we lived in culverts. We didn't have tents, we had culverts. We put sandbags over them, and that was our home for a year. And we had some good times too. We'd go into Saigon, and of course GIs, we was bar hopping and chasing the Vietnamese women around. I mean, you know, there was good times, don't get me wrong, but we needed what we called R&R, which was rest and recuperation and recreation and whatever we wanted to do. And I got to go to Thailand, and I got to go to Hawaii a couple times and seen my sister. She lived in Hawaii, so you know, taking that 10-day R&R was awful nice. Some GIs didn't come back, but it was altogether a different conflict in World War I, World War II, Korea. But Vietnam didn't get treated the best when they come back. I didn't have any problems with communities except in California when we got off the plane. Had oranges thrown at us, eggs. I came back to Onega here, my hometown. I got treated with respect, you know. But that was altogether a different war, and it shouldn't last as long as it did. But it was a politician war. We did what we had to do. I hope you guys never have to go through it, but it's an experience I'll never forget.
How? You didn't tell us about training before you got to the helicopter.
We didn't get any training at all.
You did?
Just through basic and AIT, infantry training, that was it when we got there. Well, the training that we got was from another GI that was departing country. He'd say, here's your ship, here's how you load your M60, here's how you tear it apart. And it was just an OJT, on-the-job training is what it amounted to. The only reason I got in the chopper is because I got $55 more a month combat pay. And that $55 for at that time looked pretty good. But if I had to do over, they could keep their $55. But I got a lot of good experience. I know after I got out of the service, I was in for 11 years. I'd had a lot of nightmares. I spent a lot of time in VA for counseling, which I pretty well got over now. It's still kind of hard to talk about a lot of things, but it's better. But it's the training's good. I don't want to see any kids go into combat unless we absolutely have to. I think the service is a great organization. You learn a lot of trades in there. You come out with respect. You respect them, and you know the kids all respect us around here. The kids are always asking questions, and I think the hardest thing I ever did was when I had to come up to school here about 10 years ago when my kids were in here, but I had the whole auditorium. I didn't get through with my talk, so you know that really helped me having my kids talk about this. And they claim for every year that you're in Vietnam to get deprogrammed, to get away from your nightmares and everything. For every year you're over there, you got to spend 7 years to get deprogrammed. I said, man, I'll be an old man by the time they get me deprogrammed. For all the years I was over there, because I'm looking at 21 years of counseling is what it amounts to. But I just like Saudi Arabia coming along, I thought, man, them kids are young going over there. But I get to looking, I was 20 years old too, so you know they want the young guys because they're full of spunk, they're gung-ho, and they make awful good soldiers. So if you're looking for a career, the service is a good one as long as we're not in combat. And I hope you boys, girls, they've got good benefits, they've got educational programs in there, nursing, pilots, and I'll tell you what, it pays pretty good in the way the world is now. Service is a good opportunity to advance your careers.
Didn't realize we had a recruiting officer here this morning.
Well, I did that too when I was in there. I've been in supply, I've been in recruiting, I've been door gunner, infantry, artillery. I've been all around. For 11 years, you know, my MOS has changed quite a bit from what World War I and II in Korea was.
MOS, what's that?
That's different categories they classify you in. It's like supply was a 76 Yankee. They had certain numbers they give you, and they knew what your MOS was, which is training in supply, which is what I started out, orderly room clerk, and then they changed to 11 Bravo, which was infantry. It's just a MOS. They give you a different sign, you know, depending what you were in.
Well, I sense that this experience has changed your life a lot, and some to the good and some very difficult. But it looks to me like you come out of it as a very strong man.
Well, I've got stronger, but we had a lot of family problems when I got out. Divorce, drinking, but we overcome it.
Okay. And are you retired now?
Oh no, still working. Semi-retired. I do what my body lets me do now.
Do you have injuries resulting from the war?
Oh, no injuries. Just falling down and getting hurt was all in the service, you know. I mean, I was very fortunate. I did receive the Good Conduct Medal, expert rifle, hand grenade. I also got the Vietnam campaign medals, the Bronze Star with the V device, which was probably, between that and my Air Medal, was probably my favorite medal of all of them that I'd got in the service was the Bronze Star and the Air Medal. I was pretty proud of those. And I do have a book at home if anybody's interested in reading it. It's the girls got it me for Christmas. There's different Air Force, Marine, Navy, Army is talked about their experience. It may just be a short story of what they did. And I think one of the hardest things for a person to do over there would have been the tunnel rat. And I thank the Lord I didn't have to do that. They took the smaller people that's in the service to go into these tunnels to find hidden weapons where there may be, I mean, they had underground houses that they housed maybe 30 or 40 of our enemies, and they would crawl and they'd have booby traps in there, and they would go through and they'd come face to face with the enemy. And I was glad I was a big feller. I didn't fit in them tunnels. But I do have a book at home that's real interesting, and it's different soldiers' experience in Vietnam and the different outfits they was in, which is very, very interesting.
You said you learned to shoot the machine gun by hands-on, and did you learn to fly the same way?
Yeah, the pilot, well, we'd have one pilot up there. The first time I flew, we had a 30-minute flight to Saigon. It took me an hour and a half. I asked the pilot what I was doing wrong, and he said, well, the only thing you're doing, you're policing up the whole sky. I was over here, and then I was over here, up and down. But you learn to run them foot pedals, and they just wanted you to be able to land them in case something would happen. So we had a pilot that was usually up there with us, you know, unless something drastically happened, which I never did have to bring one home, and we got shot down twice.
You did?
But we was picked up and brought back to our company, so we was okay.
Did the helicopter get picked up too? Or?
Oh yeah, we got them back. We just took small calibers and rotated down. Of course, there was always 2 or 3 gunships in the same area when we'd go out on a mission, and if one would go down, they'd circle us and pick us up, and then they'd come in if the Huey would pick them up and bring them home. We were fortunate. I was fortunate.
Have you been active in any veterans organizations?
Yes, I am commander. I have been for 12 years down here at the VFW. And I think this is going to be my last year. I'm going to try to turn it over to somebody else to take it over next year.
Okay. Well, we appreciate your willingness to come in this morning and tell us something of your experience. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
No, I'm just glad to be here, and hope you understand where your veterans are coming from. But you know, if anybody has any questions, I will answer them to the best of my ability. Like I said, I hope you don't have to go through some of the experiences I went through. Some of them good, some of them bad. But just work hard in school, and if you go into service, you can advance someplace in the service. It's a good organization.
You did mention with emotion the hardship it is on families.
Yes.
Particularly during a wartime. And right now we're going to have families experiencing that, perhaps. At least we have a number of men deployed already. So I know you must have some thoughts about that and feelings about that, and you can understand what a lot of families are going through.
Yeah, it's hard on the families because, you know, the kids and the wife suffers just as much as we do by us going over there, because we know we're leaving him behind, and you know they struggle.
How did you communicate home when you were in Vietnam?
The mail was pretty well going out. Every once in a while, if we get into Saigon, we could make a phone call, but it was kind of tough because you would call and say over, and you could only have a couple minutes. You know, it's not like the communications we have now. Imagine now you could probably use a cell phone over there, but back then you couldn't. And we communicated just by letter, and sometimes my letters might take 3 weeks to get home. My wife might get 5 or 6 letters the same day. But she said the hardest thing for her, she was living with her folks, and Sheila was up on the farm, which I think some of these girls know Sheila and them. No, this one does, but wife said every time somebody drove into the driveway, she was scared that it was military, you know, coming in and tell her something happened. So they lived in fear.
Well, thank you very much, and
You're welcome.
appreciate your service to our country and your service here in the Veterans Organization. We will end our interview at this point.
Thank you. We were on the runway for 3 days. We were pinned down on the runways. They were trying to get choppers off the ground. That's when the hand grenades and stuff come in, when they overran the compound, and we had to blow up the orphanage home. And it was kind of tough because really, you know, you think you get hungry. Nobody was hungry. Nobody was thirsty. We were doing what we could. And we was in bunkers, and we had loaded up a lot of wounded soldiers from bunkers and put them on jeeps and take up to our Colvins and try to, you know, get them help. It was probably the worst part of the conflict that I had been in, was during the Tet Offense of '68. Of course, we'd seen others, but it didn't last as long. You may go out, you may not, we may not even fire a rifle for a month, and then all of a sudden it might be 2 or 3 days of combat duty. So, you know. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. I said the other day, I'd go over to Saudi Arabia right now. I couldn't be infantry because I can't run fast enough, but put me on my helicopter and I would go. Yes, I would. I just feel like, you know, if they needed me, that's my obligation.
Through all the psychological
Yeah, I could still go because I just feel like I could benefit in certain areas. I couldn't in a lot of areas. I would probably get somewhere and hurt. But, you know, there's some areas that I could benefit in. Don't necessarily have to be in the combat zone. We need the people here in the United States to get, you know, they're just as important as the combat soldier, because if we didn't have people here in the United States, they could not ship stuff to us that we needed. Our C rations, which is food, which we've ate a lot of times now. They've upgraded a lot of things, but we have to have our weapons. We have to have parts shipped over. It's a no-win situation. I mean, these guys are just important here as the ones over there. Because without the people here in the United States, we couldn't do nothing. And, you know, I got good support. I'm pleased with the kids that, since I've got out. And like I said, California, they can have that place. I don't want no part of it. But I've had real good success with people, you know, and thanking the vets for what they did. And that's the reason I try to stay involved in the organization. That's the reason we try to do the flag presentation every year up here at the school, at the football field. I'm just proud to be able to help out on something like that. Anybody else?